Mm-mm. So excuse me, we're live, and we want to welcome you today to our platform. This is my first time trying to maneuver these gadgets, so just want to say today we're listening and talking about rethinking leadership with Dr. Ely. And Dr. Ely and I met about a year or two ago. And so, Dr. Ely, just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself today.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Dr. Fowler. My name is Dr. Latasha Ely, and I'm originally from Newport News, Virginia. I am a first generation college graduate. I attended Christopher Newport University in Newport News, so stayed at home for a little bit, and then I went on to complete my master's in educational policy planning and leadership at the College of William and Mary. And then in 2015, I graduated with my PhD in language literacy and culture at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. So that's a little bit about my educational background. I currently work for the federal government. I teach part-time as well. And I do that because the work that I do for the government doesn't really afford me the opportunity to work directly with college students. And that's really where my passion lies. So being able to teach gives me the chance to still interact with them, mentor them, and like fulfill that passion part of my life.
Okay, that's great. Well, when I was reading your bio, I was really taken with the fact that you chose to study policy plan and leadership. And so I wanted to know how doing so influenced your leadership background or your leadership decision making, or just being in the arena working with leaders.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, that because the program or the degree is so specific, it probably seems like I was very intentional about selecting that going into it. But again, as a first gen student, I got to campus and really didn't know what was going on, what I should be doing. And so one of the things that I talk with students about now is about, you know, preparing themselves earlier, because I ended up changing my major several times, which, you know, at the end of the day, it cost me money, it cost me time, but I was just figuring it out as I went, you know. So anyway, while I was on campus, I was really active and involved in student organizations and had leadership roles in those instances as a student. And I also worked part-time in the Office of Admissions for my work study. And so I actually had two individuals that I kind of latched onto in those settings, and they thankfully accepted me and mentored me, and they saw something in me when it came to how much I enjoyed that kind of student affairs work. And leading in that educational environment, in the campus environment. So they encouraged me to pursue a degree in like student affairs. And so I still I wasn't ready to branch out too far yet. And so the program at William and Mary was an educational policy planning and leadership program, but it had a concentration in student affairs. So that's how I ended up in that program. But I'm thankful for it because one, like that process, that trajectory, seeing how those individuals who looked like me and had leadership roles on campus were willing to take me under their wing. I try to do the same now with students, any student, of course, but especially those that I know don't really see themselves as much on campus. And I try to be my authentic self so that they can see that they can do that too as they progress and go into their career fields. So yeah.
No, I totally can relate to that. I know when I was entering college myself, I felt like I was a fish out of water. And I was already, 23, 24, and I was in the military. So I was doing military and going to school. And one of the things I kept coming across or hearing or experiencing was that we start a path of academic journey, and then we end up changing somewhere along the line. And so we have to go to a counselor. And then they were always saying, you come to me after it's broken, I got to put you back on track. And I ran into two wonderful counselors during my associate degree, who I will forever contribute my journey to, because they informed me how to be on a pathway, what classes to pursue, and if I had any challenges, to come back to them, and they had relationship with other teachers to be able to keep me on track. And so I think that was very critical for me. Otherwise, I'd have found my own self on a pathway of back and forth and not understanding that whole navigating process of achieving higher education. I noticed that you also, as you said, you took heart to being able to do the same for others as was done for you. And so the management guru, Peter Drucker, he talks about how culture eats strategy for breakfast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And studying strategic leadership, I find that we spend a lot of time on that, on developing leadership strategies. Talk to me about how your studies also, in regards to culture, influenced your decision and your relationships with students today.
Sure. So the question, it makes me think of the statement that gets it's pretty popular these days, and that's that representation matters. And so even before that was like a tagline, a major purpose for me pursuing the research that I did, which was focusing on Black undergraduate women's experiences of hair and skin hue politic within a culture of higher education, and specifically at a predominantly white institution. I wanted to see how those experiences potentially impacted their overall success in college, their academics, and just their life and prospects for career and professional opportunities moving forward. And part of that was based on my own personal experience. And thankfully, I was in an interdisciplinary program that allowed me the flexibility to look into things like that.
Right.
But it was important to me because, like I was saying before, I wanted young Black women especially, but Black students in general, students of color who don't really, again, particularly at predominantly white institutions, see themselves. I wanted them to see somebody who wore their hair natural, wore their hair in, braids, afro, whatever. And I change my hair all the time. And to some people, it seems insignificant, but that was important because some of the most meaningful feedback and comments that I received from students, like in my evaluations and things at the end of the semester, were in reference to not just how I welcomed them and how I tried to really nurture them and give them that correct balance of challenge and support based on their, context and what they were bringing to the classroom. But also a lot of the young Black women would always say, and I love your hair. And I'm so glad to see somebody, wearing their hair in a fro or whatever. And that meant a lot to me because I feel like in talking to them one-on-one, they spoke a lot about being on campus and sometimes going to career fairs or the, career counseling office and being told by these professionals that they could not wear their hair in this certain way and think that they would progress to a certain point. So for me to be able to show up as a doctor and someone that's a leader on campus and be Black, younger-ish, and like I said, my authentic self, I think that's so important in leadership because it sets an example. It shows them that it can be done. And for their for their white counterparts, it's also important for them to see me because statistically, we know that they are more likely to end up in leadership positions or in positions where they can hire or fire or make those kind of employee type decisions or HR related decisions. And so it's important for them to also see me as someone who looks like me and is able to accomplish and do the things that I do. So, so I guess, I don't know if it's answering your question, but for me, I think that it's important to look at yourself in leadership broader than just like on paper, these are my responsibilities or whatever, but also just thinking about like contextually and culturally, how am I making an impact? So.
Well, I think that it's definitely significant, especially when you read about stories or you hear about incidents where conversations at school that our young children encounter, as well as our older children encounter, conversations about their appearances, or how they dress or how they wear their hair. And you will have a significant impact, especially in the fact that you are now in front of students, be it virtually or physically, and you can have those conversations. You can anticipate, some of those conversations if someone comes to you. So you would be a great model for leadership. Talk to me about what it is, one of the burning questions I continue to get is, why is it so difficult for leaders to hold other leaders accountable?
That's a tough one. I think a lot of times in leadership, I think one issue to consider is that we are often reacting instead of being proactive when it
Yeah.
comes to thinking about whether our leadership is effective. So instead of doing that initial like self-reflection and self-evaluation of for example, at my full-time job, our new chief operating officer, he does these monthly, it's kind of like focus groups. It's still kind of developing how he wants it to look, but I appreciate the fact that he, out the gate, began making an effort to hear from staff and to get feedback on whether his leadership style and different things that he was implementing that from his worldview should work and be effective in our environment. But he's coming from a totally different background. He has a military background, a lot of different experience, and the majority of us do not. And so I just appreciate that he didn't just come in and try to, say this is how it's going to be. But I think a lot of leaders, I think a lot of organizations and companies don't have it built into the fabric of their organization that is a requirement. It's only after something bad has happened or after maybe a project has failed that, okay, wait, let's look at what's going on. And even then, the initial response is a lot of times to look at the staff, not necessarily the leadership. And I think if we're talking about a team, we want to make sure that it's not like I'm the leader and that's the team, but that we're all part of the team. And so I think it's hard to do that because, like I said, it's just not a natural thing that is incorporated in most like business or organizational models. But yeah, I think that one of the most important things is to come into a space self-aware and having done work on yourself as a leader and being open to having regular conversations with the individuals that you're working with to make sure that like you're asking them to hold you accountable.
Yeah. I know that it's important for our organizational leaders to really understand what you just said, because they are held accountable to developing leadership strategies, right? That drives value, that drives culture, that drives the action, and then thus the outcome that it impacts their bottom line. And so they're really, and talking about leadership readiness, and so that they're more proactive versus reactive is significant. And what you just shared is a great illustration of that. Finally, let's talk about what book are you reading currently, and how does that impact your decisions or not?
Yeah, so I want to preface this by saying that I typically, and this is not a good or bad commentary on the author or anything like that, but I typically would not have selected this book to read, but I actually organize a book club, a monthly book club, as part of my my sorority chapter, and so I try to, in keeping in mind those leadership strategies and things, even in something that somebody might think, oh, it's just a book club. But even in that setting, I didn't want to, as the coordinator, be like, this is what we're reading every month or whatever. So I've really tried to just open it up. The only thing I've asked is that we try to tap into a different genre every month. And so this month, one of the members said, let's do self-help. And so she selected, it's called Trust by Iyanla Vanzant. And so like I said, I probably never would have read the book, but I was pleasantly like surprised. Like I shouldn't say surprised, but I wasn't sure what to expect. And I found it interesting that I could actually apply it in so many areas, because I initially thought it was just going to be about like in romantic relationships or, things like that. But she touches on trust in familial, relationships. Yes, romantic, but also in the workplace, like in all different, areas of your life. So some of my like big takeaways were that first and foremost, trust is more about you trusting yourself than anything that it has to do with other individuals. And so she talked about how we often frame it like, oh, you have to earn my trust. And she says that it's really egocentric, in that it's assuming that, for one, our way is the right way or the only way, and that it's expecting that person to do everything perfectly and right to your standard, or otherwise you don't trust them. And so that was a different perspective for me, because I am definitely guilty of having said, I consider myself a really trusting person, but in certain situations, I feel like it's something I need to work on, in terms of feeling like I have to, if I don't do it, it's not going to be done right. Like that kind of mindset.
Right.
So it kind of checked me on that. And she also talked about something else that I found interesting, was when she talked about it's important to trust yourself first. She meant that in terms of your ability to, if you enter into a situation with a person and you make the decision that you're going to trust them, it's not about them earning it. You decide, I'm trusting this person. So whether it's because they're a new employee or whatever, and then from there, it's like you set your boundaries and make the determinations on, if certain things happen that do, disappoint you or break your trust or whatever, then from there you can decide whether or not, how you continue to engage with that individual, and things like that, or in a work setting, whether or not you might put them on a certain, being aware of their capacity to handle certain things. So it takes you, again, being self-aware, but also taking the time, investing in learning the individuals that you are working with and interacting with, and trusting yourself enough to know that in those situations you'll be able to handle it, like it's not gonna break you or something. So I definitely, after the fact, I would definitely recommend the book, and I loved how I could apply it in so many areas of my life.
No, I think this is great conversation. That's why I call it Candid Conversation, because our conversation can also be so pointed on topics. And we really want to talk about experiences, real life experiences, how they impact us one way or the other. The thing I wanted to put out today to those who are viewing us and those who are pursuing leadership is that organizational leadership is really critical when it comes to leading and work like this, and especially if you want to impact change in organizations in times of uncertainties. You want to create certainties, for those who you are leading. And your focus group with your employer, I think, was a great opportunity for open discussion. Because they're going to be able to have to create those leadership strategies that bring about change, right? Yeah. And so my call to action today is for leaders and organizations to view our human capital not as just resources, but as those we should invest in, that we should be able to grow and develop. So again, rethinking leadership is just us being intentional about how we lead and what we do to prepare ourselves as leaders, and how we should encounter our employees, be it in academic arena or in a governmental arena. Leadership, again, reaches across all spectrum. And that is why I wanted to be able to release my book this coming January on rethinking leadership, because I want us to be intentional about it and have an impact and continue to be innovative. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Ely, for joining me today. I am so excited. And I want to continue this conversation down the road about your impact on your students and how you impact change in your organization. So again, thank you. And thank everyone for watching. You can follow me at Arnita Fowler on Facebook and all my social media platforms. And again, I look forward to talking to you more. Thank you.
Thank you.